Hi, welcome back to Elaine's Evolving Art Techniques. Today, I am going to share with you a nature journal page that I am going to be posting at the GTM Reserve, where I give nature journaling hikes for the new calendar year. So I was just there on Thursday, and I use iNaturalist app. If you haven't used it, it's a great free app. And I'd recommend taking pictures and posting them and giving them permission. If you give permission, scientists can then add to what you find, and it gives you options to look at what it thinks it is. So it's great. So today, what I did was I printed out the photographs that I took. So this is a sweet gum leaf and tree that I'm going to use, a beautiful pine tree that fell, and a bunch of pines in the distance, which kind of leaf in. Okay, so hopefully you've grabbed your sketchbook. This is a Stillman and Burns. It's one of my favorites, but I'm actually thinking I might downsize a little bit with it. So what I have out here are my round brushes, my flat shader, and I'm going to try and use this Asian brush to make some brush strokes. Um, my mechanical pencil, my microns, which are waterproof, which are great to use with um, watercolors wet. And then I have a couple of technical ink pens, calligraphy pens with waterproof cartridges in them. You do have to give them a few minutes before you start painting. So I turned the sketchbook, uh, instead of using the 2 page or the vertical, I turned it horizontal. And then I put what they call washi tape around the edge to have a white border. Sometimes I take my gridded ruler and I'll just measure. This is a little bit wider than a 1/2 inch, but I will just take a micron and make a frame around it. If you've been following me, these last few years, I've been really getting into nature journaling, which is, words, pictures, and numbers, getting connected with nature. And let me just plug this in so we make sure we don't lose connection. There we go. Um, and it's a great way to decompress. And for me, I love, drawing nature. So I've been using a lot of circles as my composition. So today I still put a circle in. I don't know what I'm going to put in it. But often I put the subject in the circle. You can cut out squares and rectangles and kind of play with them, which is a great idea. So I would say at the GTM Reserve this past week, where I give free nature journaling hikes. And what I did from my iNaturalist photographs, which is a great app to use, is I printed some pictures so that I could kind of play with them in the nature journal. So this is some pictures of what they call a sweet gum tree and the leaves. So it's a 5 pointed leaf. It seems to be decaying. In Florida, where I lived currently, we don't really have the same northern fall. So you notice changes in different things. I loved this pine tree that fell down. It has a great perspective. And then it has I believe it's the cabbage palms. I get them confused, which is which. One's a tree and one are these plants that grow. And I also liked an image I took of the white contrast of these more grayish palm trees, and that they're changing colors. I think they're palms. I haven't ID'd it yet. So I kind of drew my circle. I have the tree going off. I have the sweet gum leaves, and then just some lines to indicate um, the branching. And I just got an idea to actually maybe darken this diagonal, and then I could actually put white gouache on top of it for the light colored trim branches. So I sketched it up just to save time. And usually now, I seem to take more photographs out in the field. Um, probably in the warmer weather when I'm down at the beach more, I'll probably go back to spending time outside. Um, if you live up north, it's kind of like spring or early fall in Florida. The humidity is gone and it's cooler. So, great things to gather are dried things. These pignut hickories are out by us. On another hike, I found these crabs out. The maple trees that are here will turn red. And obviously, there's Canadian geese and a lot of shorebirds migrating and that stay here all year. But if you're experiencing winter, you can still look in the forested areas for dried seed pods and seed plants, and those make excellent specimens um, to draw and observe. What I love about this is it doesn't have to be perfect drawings because we're learning. And so I do go through different books and try and understand what I'm looking at. The Naturalist app helps ID it, and then I can find out more information. So I've got the little photograph next to me, and I'm going to start with that. And it's kind of like, kind of a medium green look. So I'm going to take my round, and I'm using my signature 6 tubes with addition of Paints Gray, which is a blue black, makes a great gray, and burnt sienna in my palette. The rest, all the colors mostly that I need, can be mixed. And if you're interested in that, please check out my brand new website. I have my signature class on it, and there'll be more classes. It's called Six Watercolors with 6 Tubes, and it has so much techniques in it for watercolors with projects, and it also goes through mixing um, kind of the earth tones, the yellow ochres, raw siennas, burnt sienna, it's Payne's gray. And once you learn those, I always suggest that if you use burnt sienna and Payne's gray like I do, then go ahead and get some tubes. If you want to know materials I use, it's also on the website, and it lists the materials, a lot of materials for different classes. So building a website has a lot of information on it. So I'm just going to mix some greens, and usually I like a dark green and kind of a light green to add more blues. So I am going to basically, I'm not going to clean the brush. I had some green on it, but I would wet the area for more of a wet and get some color on it. And then there's one tucked under here. And you can look up sweet gum. Maybe it grows in your area. And it's a 5-pointed leaf. And there's still some yellow. The veining looks kind of yellow. And I can always go back with an opaque wash to kind of add some more. So, oops, I don't like that mix. So hold on a second. So usually a cooler yellow um, with my cooler green gets me as a base start. And then if I want it to have a little bit more blue in it, which the leaf is showing, I'll just add a touch more. I always have a little Kleenex paper towel there. So it's kind of wet. It looks like the right side of the leaf is getting some light. So I'm going to drop in a little bit of that. And the paper should still be kind of wet. And just to add a little contrast in these leaves, maybe some lights hitting it. So obviously, if the light's hitting it, you would make it a little bit lighter, maybe a little warmer green, meaning some yellows in it because the sun's hitting it. But this is definitely a cool green. This might be a little bit deeper, kind of, it's actually tucked a little bit more under that leaf, so it's probably giving it a little bit more shade. And I'm just going to take a little yellow, and that's really bright. Maybe a little bit warmer yellow would have been better, but it's okay. So the leaf is kind of changing. And then I have some nice branches. You could use some burnt sienna with a little cool red in it. And let's see. I like these brushes because they get um, a really fine point, which is important to me in painting. Sometimes I can just keep this one brush going. And we'll let it kind of dry, and then I can come back and add some veining, kind of erase some of the pencil marks, which doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to switch and start working on this fallen pine. So you could take any tree that you find that's native to your area and find one that's fallen and get some really neat different pictures. So I can definitely see the light is on the left side of the tree, and then we'll add some dark. So pines go from grayish plaques. There's some of them, they have orange in them. And at the bottom, there's these nice leaf shaped plants there. Just looking for a place. I still got that kind of yellowy green color there. So I'm going to start a little bit lighter. I'm going to go with a little bit smaller brush. I like rounds. Usually I use flats. They just, I don't know, I just can do more unless I'm filling in like a surface area. So that just kind of some indication of the plants, and they have kind of changed the color, but I'm just going to kind of indicate them a little bit. And you can get some of the spikes. There's a lot of grasses out now. Um, I don't know. You probably would see ferns up north in the woods, and kind of like that. As they go back and they're not getting direct light, they kind of seem a little bit darker, but you can mix your greens. Now, if I was in the field, I'd have some round travel brushes. I also like the water refillable brushes. Those work really nice too. And if you're in the area, Northeast Florida, join me once a month and come out uh, with the group. This one's, I'm hoping I will use to post. So now I'm going to take, there's almost like some color to that. It's maybe like a really pale, I don't know if it's a little pink. I don't know if something's bouncing. So I'm going to dilute my cool red a little bit and first start with really some water just to get some color in there. Peach or pinky color just to show some white. And then I'm going to take probably some Payne's Gray I have on my palette. I'll show it to you. It's kind of like, it's got some blues, some different, but I'm just going to use that. And since it's wet, I'm going to just add some on the right side. And then take a, from my ground, which should just have some water, and just kind of soften it so there's no really hard edges. And kind of let that dry a little bit. And then just looking at roots, really nice, fun. Just putting a little bit of the Payne's Gray, very diluted, just to kind of indicate. And it seems like there's some dark shadows around. So I'm going to go into it a little bit deeper. A good dark tone would be maybe burnt sienna and some Payne's Gray, or maybe ultramarine. So it depends how detailed I want to get it. Looks like there's might be some shadowing under here. And then maybe just bring it out a little bit, soften it with just water, clean your brush, kind of soften it. It's got some browns in there. Sometimes it's just nice to kind of start putting in some movement of color. And obviously, if you're working in the field, you're not going to dabble as much like this. You're going to be much quicker, especially if you're with other people. Um, Sometimes we bring chairs with, and what's nice is my husband will kind of explore a little bit while I kind of try and draw, but this time just doing it in the studio. So if you want it to soften, make sure you take off, some of the paint and then blend some of that in a little bit. with just water, soften it a little bit. So it seems like it's kind of patchy here. I'll probably go in with waterproof ink, or microns are great, and kind of try and maybe indicate a little bit. It's kind of a shame I took off the extension. Maybe I could carry it up here, keep the eye going across the page. Now I think it needs a little burnt sienna. And for softer look, make sure you put, some water on the page. I'm kind of creating this background back here. Let's kind of soften this a little bit. And there's some real good darks. And just kind of notice what you're seeing. What are you seeing that's that is speaking to, like this tree did. I really like the way it was falling, and those of us on the hike really were drawn to it. So this is still wet, and I'm able to just dab, and it kind of is just spreading, spreading itself. Sometimes I take my finger, just make sure. And if I don't like something while it's wet, I can just lift it up or take this little flat shader brush, which I love, and I can lift it up. Now, if it's really wet, sometimes you have to not paint, you've got to let it dry, or take a hair blower, um, or I use, it's kind of like a hair blower, but it doesn't make as much noise, and it's made more for art, so I like it. I think it's listed. So, you can dabble as much or as little as you want. So it seems to be some maybe shadow. So I'm just gonna dab, and now I'm getting some dry brush, which means the brush is getting dry and there's less paint on it. So it's actually working for me, just to kind of give it some color. And then when that dries, I can go back in and add some color. So I'm thinking about the background. I think I want to give it kind of a blue background. So this is where I would use a soft brush or a flat brush to kind of blend in. So I'm looking at my brushes kind of to see what I have. So I'm going to wet this background area. And if you're using different type of sketchbooks, you want it to be either a mixed media paper or a watercolor paper. Um, I like the Stillman Burns. There's a couple. I like Zetas and I think Epsilons. And then just kind of check to see if your paper. And then, of course, you decide which blue paint you want to use. And I think I'm going to use some cooler blue. And just kind of with the soft brush, give it a little bit of color. And then I'm going to go back with either a gel pen or something else. And I don't know what I want to do here yet, so I'm going to let that dry. Let me go ahead and show you dryer that I use, and I can dry that so I can continue. So it's a heated craft tool, probably an Amazon product by Manger, I guess. So you'll listen and it barely makes any noise, but you can use the hair blower. Um, Now, obviously, in the field, you can't, but the beauty of being at home. And it doesn't take too long with this piece. If it's sopping wet, you might have to blot it a little bit. Let's see. Okay. So that was really about it. Might be slightly damp, but I'm going to go back to the leaves and put in some of the leaf spots. Now, I could just drop in some uh, paints gray with some burnt sienna and start obviously if it's wet it's going to bleed and be softer, so I'm just pushing it down a little bit. So if you paint any observation, uh, please, post them on Facebook so I can see what you're doing. And if you have any requests of what's on there, always teach some techniques, no matter what I'm showing. And I'll be teaching some like winter classes as well. They're always on Zoom pretty much now. So everybody can join. All you need is a free account. And if you sign up for my private classes through me, uh, if there's Zoom, you'll get a link, you'll get a list of what you need for the class. And I am kind of adamant sometimes about the paints, but you will learn a lot of different techniques. And most of us, that's what we need when we start. And then we get back to the creativity piece to be able to paint different things that we like. So you can see it's building up. Um, it's not as dark yet, but I can go back with um, some color. So let me show you. I've got some gouache colors. And so like the brush is still dirty. So you want to really, when you switch from light to dark, and normally what I do is I take my spritzer and just wet them. These are really light colors. I like them. There are sets of gouache. So gouache is opaque, and what's nice is you can paint on top of things where watercolors we really need to plan out. It's got to be dry, maybe a little white with the yellow would show up a little better. So I'm gonna take some white gouache, put it here, and then take my yellow, and I think it's gonna show up a little bit better. There we go. So we'll see. Yeah, that you can see it, hopefully. So I'm just kind of putting in the vein. When you're out in the field, yellow is fine. Maybe I'll get a little deeper. This one doesn't show as much veining. It actually has more decay going on. So I learn new things all the time. And if you're a lifelong learner or like nature, it's perfect. There we go. Okay. So now I want to take, this is a 0.1 micron. They come in different points. So 0.1 is pretty light. And let's see, I'm gonna kind of indicate some patchiness maybe. And you don't have to draw everything. The eye will put it together for us. So this is kind of a really dark section. So I can add that. Now, if it was ink, sometimes when it's wet, there we go, micron of it, you can kind of blend it in and then it will dry. But typically, if you add watercolors to this when it's dry, that looks great on the video. It's nice and dark. And I do have some sepia ones too that I really like. So it's fun kind of to do some mixed media with that. And just wet out while you apply it. If you wait too long, it will dry, and then you can't do that. It just brings the trunk out. Get some dark in there. Just soften it a little bit. And then if you've wet too much and you want to draw, just, wait till it dries a little bit. And there's some, faint broken lines under here. And that we can always take the brush while it's wet and deepen it a little bit too. So it's starting to show. It's not quite where I wanted, but hopefully this is giving you some inspiration and an opportunity. So this still, I see the blue, but it's not bright, bright blue. So kind of thinking, so I can do different options since these are pretty fine lines of the trees, but against this background, it's still, see how bright that blue sky is? So I'm thinking this time I'm going to mix two blues together, warm and cool, which kind of makes a little bit more of a cobalt looking blue. And I'm going to wet this again. This time I'm just using the side of my round. And let's go with that soft brush again. And some water. Yeah, I think that works. So if it's too thin, the white's not going to really pop too well. And of course, we'll have to dry it again. Now I think the white will show up. And you just want to be careful once the page is drying like that. You don't want to keep lifting it because that's when you start getting those streaks and blooms. So if it's not dark enough like you want it, wait till it dries or dry it and go back and give it another layer. We call that glazing. Excuse me. So you can feel it. It's kind of wet. I want to show you a quick product. Um, but if you don't want to get into gouache, I've recommended this product for years, Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White. It's a really opaque white. It works great. Mine's kind of getting dry. So let's see. And then there seems to be some here. So I'm just wetting and activating it. And of course, opaque, like you really want that fine tip to work. A lot of uh, dry paint to clean it up. And then what I'm going to do is go over hopefully the pencil lines. I'm just going to move these so I can move my sketchbook. Now, if your paint's still wet, this isn't going to work for you. So make sure your paint is dry. Like when you use opaque paints, you really want them dry. And they're pretty, if they're the long leaf pines, they're usually pretty straight, but sometimes they have a little bit of, energy curve in there. Sometimes with nature journaling, I'll just focus on one subject. It doesn't have to be a whole page. Um, Careful you don't put too much pressure and get it too thick, but you can see the way it's definitely popping out. It's getting dry, so need to lubricate, keeping it. Right, you want it to flow. Now, when I'm painting paintings, I like to use blocks because they're glued on the side and you don't get so much buckling that sometimes I'll iron the paper. Oop, now it's a little too thick. So get it early, lift it up. And then I kind of look at, there's pencil marks here, so kind of gives some shading, which is okay. And one way, if I didn't blow up the picture to see the details, I can also take a magnifying glass, and there are some markings on these trees. I don't know, they could be, I want to say like the markings kind of look like a river birch, but hard to tell. So now I've got that, and the tops of the trees are kind of colored with some branching on it, almost like a raw sienna. There's some browns, there's some yellow ochres. So I am going to move some stuff here. And I tried, this is a little Asian brush. And I'm just trying to kind of, can't be too wet, but it kind of looks like pine or, so I'm going to activate some of these paints I have. Because sometimes if the brushes get too wet, it won't do too much. So we'll see. I've never done this before. Maybe just tapping around. So if the paint's too wet, your brush gets soft and then that doesn't work. How's that showing up? Uh-huh. Okay. And then I think some like golden yellow, like ochre might be good. So we'll go back to some color I have on the palette. And you could dab, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. So it's starting to get wet. So sometimes switching, right, the color, it's not opening anymore because it's so wet. So, like, I might go to another brush if I got it too wet, if I have something else I can use. Just indicate colors. It seems like it needs a little orange. So it's got to be kind of a soft brush that um, you can manipulate a little bit. And careful to leave some open spaces there. Now, it's looking like the right side definitely has a little bit more of shadow. So maybe little very fine lines broken seem to, the eye will pull it together. And then it could put some branching in it. Real light sweeping hand. It seems to be wet, so sometimes I have to wipe the pen on the paper a little bit. And that kind of gives a little contrast, and it's getting stuck on this paper. Okay, maybe it's too wet, but I think you see where I'm getting. So I'm getting all these different textures and building slowly on them. So this needs, let's get back to micron. You could go with the 005. Not sure I currently have one. So I just go back and forth and kind of play with it that way. There seems to be, let's see, kind of pop it a little bit. So I might use this as some writing, which would also be nice. And let's get some contrast. I think instead of putting another uh, picture in there, so I'm going to put like some branching in there. Remember, it's fine, no pressure. Is helpful that way. And if I don't like a line or it's too harsh, I could just take this shader and just soften anything. Okay, so let's see what maybe what I would like to put in is some information about the American sweet gum. Maybe I could divide this into even thirds. Let's see. So the American sweet gum has lots of different names. So first I can put in the scientific name. But it goes by American Storex, Hazel Pine, Billstead, Red Gum, Satin Walnut, Star Leafed Gum, Alligator Wood because of the textures on the bark. This isn't the bark of the tree, but maybe I could add it here as well. Um, Aromatic gum gives off the pine resin gives off a really cool scent. So I think I need to accentuate this little circle here. And I did it in pencil. This is a neat little gadget. Let's see. I need to kind of line it up to where, and then make sure that I start and stop where I have like images and it breaks. So now you can see it's kind of in there. I could give it maybe a color, um, maybe something peachy or orange to pop this color. Let's see. It might be. I'm just going to pull all that paint down without adding stuff because what that does is it's just going to make it brighter and maybe something a little softer. And then I'm going to lightly sweep it over those plants at the bottom. So what should we title this? How about maybe a day at the GTM? I think that would be nice. So sometimes it's nice to have some guidelines. Oh, where you have space. So let's see. About a walk. GTM, which is the reserve out here. It's actually an estuary, and it's really great place. Oops, wrong one. I wanted to use this one because I can turn it. And then I will erase under it. And often what I'll do is I put the date and the time. So here it was, I'll put smaller letters, a nature journal hike. And it was on 12/5/2024. Sunny, 60 degrees, from 10 till noon. And then you can put, for me, it would be the trail. Some people put longitude, latitude on it. They're kind of GPS stuff. So yellow, orange, blue. This new part of the trail I'm taking. So that really kept that really light, and we could pop it a little bit with maybe some more color. And what would pop the, so I'm still going to put some words in here and lots of choices. Maybe I can put some of this, some trees back here and keep going. So I hope you enjoyed our session. It was a little bit longer than expected, but we really did cover quite a bit. And then just to show you, this is starting to peel. And it's sticking to it. So be careful, but it gives that nice, really clean edge. Now, remember, you can draw in an edge too. So I really like what's going on here. I feel like I need to work a little bit on that so I can retape and kind of match that up or just be careful. And then I always sign my name and put my Chinese seal on it. So it's my artwork, and then post it. Don't forget to erase, make sure that's dry. Erase any pencil lines when you're done. Just looks so much nicer. I can even draw in some branching with the pencil. Seems like it needs a little something. But really lots of choices here. It's getting a little dark. Maybe I'll drop in some light. Lots of different options. So let me know what you think, and please like the video and start to follow me on my new website. Thank you.